Welcome back to the channel, everybody. This is Abyss 1232 here. As you can see, I have my CZ97 in front of me, and I've been shooting this pistol quite a bit. I absolutely love it. It's extremely accurate, handles very well, as do all my CZ75s. But today we're just going to go ahead and disassemble this pistol because I do have a project in mind. So first off, we'll go ahead and show that the firearm is clear, nothing in the chamber, nothing in the pistol. I already pulled the other grip off, but whatever tool you need to do that, you will go ahead and remove your grips. Put those aside. Pull your hammer back, line up your takedown lines. Go ahead and push your slide stop out. Pull your slide forward. Take your recoil guide rod and recoil spring off. You take your plug, which will lead you to your barrel bushing. Once you unscrew your bushing, it'll allow you to take your barrel out. And for now, I'm going to leave the slide just like that, even though I'll take it down further later on in the video. We'll come back to the frame here. Going to go ahead and remove these portions, the hammer spring, hammer plug. And I do have this nice mat down, but I'll remove that for just a second. So that way I have a nice hard flat surface, so I can put a little bit of pressure on this mainspring plug. Once I do that, I'll take this pin punch and I'll push that pin through to the other side. Make sure that your hammer is down, so that way you're not fighting the tension of the mainspring. So, as you can see, put a little pressure. It'll allow you to push your pin out. At the same time, go ahead and push your magazine brake forward and out of its position. So that way, when you pull your punch out, your mainspring plug and hammer plug will all come out. Reset my workstation. Take my 1/16 punch. You won't need a hammer here. Just go ahead and push that pin through. That'll be your magazine brake and the pin that holds that. Grab all those pieces, put that aside. That'll bring us to the sear cage. Nice little tool here will be a micro flathead screwdriver. You'll go ahead and bring the hammer back, engage the savvy, put it on the on position. And what that'll do is that'll actually lift up your sear spring right here to allow you to get your flathead underneath the spring, move it out of its position, move it to the right, and let it sit on the ledge. You can do this a couple different ways. You can take a little pin punch, you can push it from the right to the left. That way it'll bring out your manual safety. Or if you have enough grip, you can just go ahead and pull that out. As you can see, while you pull your manual safety out, your sear cage assembly will come out with it. Again, we're going to put that aside for right now. We'll go ahead and disassemble that sear cage assembly in just a moment. Now what you have inside, you can see the spring and the manual safety detent. It is under slight pressure, so what I'll do here is hold that with my finger and as I push that out, it won't go flying out of the pistol, it'll end up right here in my finger. Again, that's the manual safety detent along with the spring, which now allows you to push this pin up, exposing your hammer pin. You can choose to leave this pin in the frame or pull it completely out. It's up to you. I'm going to go ahead and leave that in the frame for now. From the right hand side of the frame, I'm going to go ahead and push my hammer pin to the left, as that's the only way you can push this pin, from right to left. As you can see, it's larger on the left hand side. Once you pull this out, you'll see your disconnector connected to your hammer, then your hammer connected to your strut. Again, we're going to put that aside just for the moment. Continue disassembling the firearm. Now, I don't have a gun vise or gun block. This is what I choose to use, since I'm a do-it-yourselfer. I'm not a professional, but it seems to work just fine. What we're left with here is our trigger, held by this trigger pin, which connects to the trigger return spring. That'll connect to your trigger bar. So you are going to have to take a look at your pin. As you can see on the left hand side of my firearm, this pin has been expanded outwards, more so than it has on the right, which means from the factory this pin was pushed in from the left to right. In order to take it out, I'm going to have to punch it out from the right hand side to the left. I'm sure there's a couple different ways to do this, but I take a 1/16 punch and I hammer that pin out. But before you do that, this spring is under tension. So what's going to happen is, once you start hammering your trigger pin out, your trigger return spring will fly out. Now, in order to prevent losing that spring, you can a couple different options, I guess. You can kind of just have your hand here ready to catch it. Place a bag over this side of the firearm. That way spring will shoot into the bag. I do have masking tape. You can go ahead, use tape, and then go ahead and tape this side. So that way once the spring comes loose, it'll be caught inside the frame. You can also punch this pin out, and simultaneously you can put a slave pin in so it'll hold your trigger assembly together. Now, since I'm actually going to be replacing the trigger and we're also disassembling, I'm just going to go ahead and push the pin out. Again, I use a 1/16 punch. Some will argue that you use a different pin punch to do this, but I've never had problems this way. If you choose to use a 1/16 punch and punch out your trigger pin, it will expand the opposite side of your trigger pin, rendering this pin useless after you pull it out. So you will need to replace this trigger pin if you choose to do it this way, which I'm going to do. So again, I'm going to be placing my hand to cover the fact that the spring is going to be flying out. So as you can see, trigger pin is now out. Once I release this punch, or once I release this pin punch, this spring is going to come flying out. So slowly pull it out, and as maybe you heard it, you'll see that trigger return spring came flying out, and I caught it in my hand. Put the pin out. You can pull your trigger and trigger bar out of the frame. This pin might be loose, but should be pretty easy to push this pin out as well, separating your trigger bar from your trigger. Now what you have left in the frame is this screw, and on some firearms this screw is actually going to be staked. So as you can see, they tried to stake it on the left and right hand side here, but if you get a firm grasp on it and a flathead that properly fits, you should be able to unscrew that. Now if you have difficulty unscrewing this, another tip again from a viewer is to heat this area up. Allowing it to loosen. You could put some oil or grease down there, and then hopefully that'll allow some lubricant to soak through there. Or you could just give it a lot of pressure and hope that you don't damage that screw. Again, if you think you're going to damage the screw, or it's very difficult for you to get this out, you're going to have to end up replacing this. As you can see, mine, even though I was able to get it out pretty easily, it's a pretty easy to damage this screw head. So you might want to look into a replacement screw if you need to remove this screw. It's going to leave you with your magazine release tension spring. Now, if you choose to take this out, which you're more than welcome to, I like to leave things in place as much as possible so I don't have to reinstall them. I'm just going to slowly pull it out and pull it up. And I pull it up just enough so that I can push the magazine release through and out of the frame. That way I don't have to reinstall this spring. So it looks like I have everything out of the frame that I need to do any work, to do any polish work, to do any repair work. If you should need to replace these springs, just pull those out. You pull your magazine release spring out if you should so need to. And that's your magazine release. That'll pretty much do it for the frame. Which leads us to slide again. And all you need to do is grab a 1/16 punch again, or let's try and do that with a 3/32. Go ahead and punch that through. that'll push out your firing pin retaining pin, and hopefully you can see through all the dry firing and just regular firing that pin has already started to eat itself away. So right there you'll see pretty big groove right there that's already been eaten away on this pin. And these are prone to breaking, so if anyone owns a CZ75, I highly recommend replacing this pin. But for now, this is just going to be the disassembly. So let's go ahead and pull pin punch out. That'll allow your firing pin to come out. Once you do that, you can push the firing pin block down. That allows your firing pin to fully leave the cavity. Firing pin block will come out along with the firing pin block spring. And got to make sure to get the spring also out of that cavity. So there you are, guys. That'll be the disassembly of the CZ97. Go ahead and show you the parts that we took out. It's going to be the firing pin spring, the firing pin block spring, firing pin retaining pin, you can have your mainspring plug, you have your magazine brake, with the pin. You have your strut and hammer, the hammer pin, and the disconnector. You have your manual safety detention spring along with your manual safety. This will be your trigger bar. Goes with your trigger return spring, trigger pin number 1, trigger pin number 2, your manual safety with its screw, of your recoil spring, guide rod, your barrel, the bushing, and then your grips are somewhere up there. Now, quick note, if you choose to go further, the only thing I missed would be your extractor and then your loaded chamber indicator, which your loaded chamber indicator is held by an Allen screw right there, and then that'll pop out, and then your extractor is right here. You have your sights, which are held in with a pin, and your rear sight, which is actually glued. A good tip to remove your rear sight would be to also heat this up to loosen any glue that they have inside holding that piece together, and then either using a sight vise or bracing your pistol, your slide as well as you can, and knocking it out with a couple pins, a vinyl pin punch. If you choose to take your hammer, disconnector, and strut bar, you have to remember that these pins are going to be staked most likely, and if I look carefully you will see that these are staked not only on this side but on this side as well, which means that you're going to need to strongly brace that piece in order to knock out those pins. Highly recommend getting a starter punch and something really strong to brace these parts, and a heavy hammer to knock these out. It will take a lot of force to remove these pins. Now, if you go even further, you need to work on the cage, sear cage. You're going to need to be warned that there is an L spring right here that's going to be giving you tension on your firing pin block lifter right here. It's a very delicate spring. Just make sure not to break it or lose it, because it's very easily lost because it's extremely small, and again it is very delicate, so be careful not to snap that. You'll have your sear spring, you'll have your sear, and then you'll have your sear cage pin. So if you decide to work on this piece, again, springs under tension will fly out. Go ahead and push your pin out. Make sure you have something to catch all of your springs in. I just use my hand. You'll see that once you disassemble your sear cage assembly, you'll have your sear cage, your sear, you'll have your sear spring, you'll have your firing pin block lifter, and then you'll have that L spring as I mentioned before. So guys, that was the disassembly of the CZ97 with the manual safety. If you guys have any questions, comments, please feel free to leave them down below. Thank you guys for watching. I appreciate all the comments, all the reviews, all the likes, and the subscriptions. Thanks a lot. Shoot safe and shoot straight, guys.